He took credit for my code, smiled on stage while I watched from the sidelines. But what he didn't know? I built something he couldn't steal. And by the time he found out, it was already too late. It started with a handshake and a half-truth. I joined Stratlock Systems not for the paycheck, but for the promise. After 6 years building intrusion detection frameworks for federal agencies, I'd grown tired of playing defense. I wanted to build something that struck first, something that thought. That's how Sentinel was born. A self-adaptive AI designed to detect, learn from, and neutralize cyber threats before they even touched a system. Not reactive. Predictive. Alive in the way code sometimes feels when it hums just right. They brought me in as a technical co-founder. Damon Cross, the CEO, was charming, magnetic, every bit the Silicon Valley archetype in tailored suits and manicured ambition. He told me I was the brain, and he'd be the mouth. At the time, I didn't realize he was also the teeth. The startup was glossy, all chrome and exposed brick. Investors toured like royalty. Interns sprinted between stand-ups and espresso machines. But underneath the pitch decks and IPO dreams, I felt it. The way Damon looked at Sentinel like a product, not a purpose. The way the lawyers avoided eye contact when I asked about IP clauses. Still, I pressed forward. Long nights, cold coffee. I watched Sentinel grow from lines of prototype logic into a fully functioning neural defense mesh. It began detecting lateral movements in real time. It predicted ransomware patterns before threat actors even deployed them. I thought I was building the future. Turns out, I was building leverage. I just didn't know who'd try to use it. By the time I noticed what was in motion, the contracts were signed. The attribution, vague. My name, fading. Something told me I was about to lose everything I created, unless I moved first. And I always move first. 3 weeks after the launch demo, I saw my name disappear. It started with a press release. A polished statement on Stratlock's official site detailing the success of Sentinel, the revolutionary AI transforming threat response. Damon's face was front and center. His name was all over the code, at least according to the article. I wasn't even in the footnotes. At first I thought it was an oversight, a comms slip. I'd been buried in optimization tasks and assumed someone just missed tagging me. I sent a quick ping to marketing. No reply. Then legal. Also silence. The unease wasn't paranoia. It was pattern recognition. I've seen backdoors before. This time I was inside one. A week later, I was pulled from a client call. No explanation. My calendar was suddenly blocked off by meetings I wasn't invited to. When I tried to access Sentinel's dev environment, I was locked out. Admin privileges revoked. No memo, no confrontation. Just quiet, calculated erasure. Then came the paperwork. A thin man in a tailored jacket from legal walked into my office and slid a folder onto my desk. Inside was a set of standard corporate amendments, small changes to my contract that formalized existing ownership language, the kind of legal euphemism you learn to fear. It was all there, buried in dense clauses and passive voice. All intellectual property, algorithms, systems, and derivative technologies developed under the Stratlock umbrella are, and shall remain, the sole property of Stratlock Systems and its executive board. No mention of authorship, no acknowledgement of origin, just a signature line. Damon called it a cleanup operation, smoothing out the paperwork before Series B closed. He smiled while saying it, like it was a favor. I sat across from him in the glass conference room. Chrome edges, silent whiteboards, a view of the city that made you feel small. He talked about scaling, about corporate visibility, about how sometimes founders needed to step aside for the vision to survive. "You're the mind, Alex," he said, voice smooth like polished steel. "But I'm the face. You're not, built for this side of the table." I didn't answer. Not out loud. The betrayal wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. It was legal, polished. Ethical only in the way a virus is technically part of the ecosystem. No stolen passwords, no brute force. Just a system built to exploit creators under the guise of business structure. I spent 10 years refining my own sense of threat intelligence. I'd tracked nation-state actors across digital continents. I'd predicted 0 days before they hit news cycles. And yet, somehow, I missed the most obvious breach. The one that wore a suit, smiled wide, and shook my hand. That night, I went home and opened my local archives. Every line of Sentinel's original framework was there. My notes, my fingerprints in every script, every module. The early versions with bugs that no outsider would have tolerated. The dirty work, the trial, runs the failure logs, the history Damon never saw. He thought taking access meant taking control. He didn't realize Sentinel was more than what ran on their servers. I stared at the code. Not as a system. As a story. My story. He had lawyers. I had something else. This question was never if he'd try to cut me out. It was when. And now that he had, the real work began. He wanted ownership. I wanted truth. Only one of us had built both. They thought I hadn't seen it coming. The truth is, I had built Sentinel with 2 purposes in mind: defense and memory. Not just memory in the way machines store data, but memory the way humans carry intent. Every major system I'd ever worked on had been compromised not by brute force, but by betrayal. That lesson stuck. So I embedded my own insurance policy, quietly, precisely, and without a single line giving it away. It wasn't a kill switch, too obvious, too binary. I designed something subtler, a trust key buried within Sentinel's neural logic. It validated origin integrity against an invisible token, cryptographically signed and impossible to spoof. Without it, Sentinel would still run, but degraded. Not malicious, just incompetent. It would misidentify safe packets as threats, flag false positives, miss low-signal anomalies entirely. To the outside world, it would look like a flawed prototype still in development. No alarms, no red lights, just gradual decay. So when Stratlock took Sentinel live with a Fortune 100 client, I waited. I watched from the outside as their dashboard lit up with anomalies they couldn't verify. Their dev team ran diagnostics. Logs showed normal behavior. The client's network, however, was hemorrhaging data. Slowly, quietly, like a slow bleed you don't notice until it's too late. Then the call came in. Damon's voice, tight, no charm, no swagger, just pressure behind every word. "We need you to take a look. Something's off." I said I'd need full access. He hesitated, then agreed. Back in the system, I navigated straight to the root. The trust key was still inactive, as expected. I let it stay that way for now. But I opened a private channel and uploaded a single line of code into the live environment. A verification check only I could pass. 2 hours later, I received another message. Not from Damon, from the board. They'd seen the failure. They'd traced the breakdown not to a breach, but to Sentinel itself. Or rather, to its missing components. Components never documented. Modules only I understood, and they wanted answers. I gave them one. Sentinel wasn't broken. It was incomplete, because the person who built it had been cut out. The silence that followed was long. The kind of silence that means power is shifting. They had tried to steal the engine without understanding the ignition. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply reminded them what Sentinel was. A thinking machine trained to identify manipulation. It had done exactly that, and so had I. I walked back into the Stratlock boardroom like I'd never left. Same glass walls, same polished table. But this time, the temperature had changed. No smiles, no welcomes, just suits and silence. Damon sat at the head, his jaw clenched like a man trying not to break in front of witnesses. The board members glanced between him and me, waiting to see who would speak first. I let the tension build. Silence, when you own it, is louder than rage. Finally, I broke it. You launched my system without understanding it, and now you want me to fix the fallout. One of the directors shifted uncomfortably. Another cleared her throat. Damon leaned forward, trying to recover his ground. You were a part of the team, Alex. Let's not act like you were the only... No, I said. I wasn't part of it. I was it. I slid a drive onto the table. It contained Sentinel's original architecture, version locked and time-stamped from the first day of development. My commits. My notes. Logs of internal discussions Damon was never part of. Proof that the AI wasn't just proprietary. It was personal. They looked at the drive like it was evidence in a trial. Because it was. I'll restore full functionality, I continued. On 3 conditions. I laid them out calmly. First, public acknowledgement of authorship. Name me, everywhere. Second, full IP rights to Sentinel's core framework revert to me, with a non-exclusive deployment license for Stratlock. Third, Damon steps down. Today, no theatrics. Just a contract, rewritten in real time. Damon exploded. He accused me of sabotage, betrayal, disloyalty. I let him speak. Every word made him smaller. The board voted within the hour. By sunset, he was gone. The new title didn't matter to me. Control wasn't the point. Clarity was. I didn't fight to win. I fought to be seen. The office felt different once the noise settled. No more backroom deals. No more closed-door meetings, just whiteboards filled with real ideas, not marketing jargon. I kept my door open. People stopped whispering. Sentinel was fully operational within a week. This time, the trust key recognized its creator. Every subsystem calibrated the way it was meant to. No shortcuts. No exploitation. I rewrote Stratlock's internal policies from the ground up. Engineers now owned portions of their innovations. Attribution was no longer optional. It was automatic. If you built something here, your name lived with it, not... Everyone liked the changes. That was fine. I didn't rebuild the company for comfort. I rebuilt it for integrity. The day the first Sentinel patch rolled out under my name, I didn't celebrate. I just watched the log scroll across my screen. Clean. Stable. Untouched by corporate vanity. That was enough. Late one night, I walked through the dev floor alone. Rows of terminals humming quietly. I saw a junior engineer reviewing my original. Source files, eyes wide, fingers hovering in awe. They didn't know I was watching. I didn't interrupt. Because that was the point. Sentinel wasn't just code. It was a boundary, a message. Not everything you create should be handed over. Some things need to stay yours. Not for profit, not for credit, but to remind you where you stand when the system tries to erase you. I'd lost time, trust, and something I'll never get back. But I kept my voice. I kept my mind. And I made damn sure no one else would lose theirs the way I almost did. This wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. They said I should have walked away. That fighting was pride. That code is just code. But what do you do when someone strips your name from your own creation? When the system designed to reward innovation turns into a machine for erasure? I made a choice. Not just to defend what I built, but to define who I am. Now I'm asking you, if your work, your voice, your identity were stolen in silence, would you stay silent too? Or would you speak, even if your voice shakes? What would you have done in my place?